Welcome. Basically, it's written, even this, opposite this, did Hashem, the Creator, make. Meaning, there's good and the opposite of good. There's this and the opposite of this. Means everything that exists in the good, there exists in the opposite, this in the opposite of this. And that's what Hashem, or Elohim, literally made. So that's a verse that's written, which means that there's good and there's the opposite of good that Hashem made. So from this, it's understood, basically. Basically, from this, it's understood that this context is talking about Egypt, the exile in Egypt. Meaning, it says everything was created good, opposite, good. So everything that exists in the opposite of good exists in the good. So if Egypt was the ultimate bad, so what's the opposite of the ultimate bad? Meaning, what was Egypt created to correspond to? So from this, it's understood. It's understood that the opposition of the bad of Egypt to the good of the Bnei Yisrael, of the children of Israel, basically saying the fact that Egypt was the bad, the raw, the bad of Egypt, the fact that the badness of Egypt was opposed to the good of the children of Israel. Why was that? That is because that is similar to like an example of it, meaning, okay, basically everything that's good, Hashem created the opposite of good. This opposite this. So Hashem created the badness of Egypt, the evil Egyptian culture, and he also created the goodness of the souls of the people of Israel. So it's saying that the fact that the Egypt was bad, it is similar, so to speak, and it's like an example of the goodness of the people of Israel. Meaning, the bad of Egypt was like the exact opposite of the good of the people of Israel. So what exactly does that mean? It's saying, because since the Egyptians, or that since Egypt in general, is the point, the general point of bad, which this explained earlier. It said in another place earlier in this that says that Egypt is like the source of all bad, basically. Egypt is the point, like the central point, the general, this Nakuda right here is point, and then Haklalis is like the general point, the general, like, the source of bad. It said earlier Egypt was like the source of all bad that exists. That's the concept of Egypt. Is like the Nakuda is the point, and Haklalis is like the general. So like the general source of bad. So Egypt was a general source of all bad. So therefore, behold, it opposes not only to go, like, meaning Egypt doesn't only go against the details that exist within the people of Israel. We'll get back to the second. Rather, the badness of Egypt, the evil of Egypt, opposes the point, the essential core of the Jewish people. Like the fact that Egypt is the essential source of all bad. Therefore, since this was created opposite this was opposite this, therefore the essential core of all bad of Egypt opposed not only the basic level of the souls of the people of Israel, rather it says that it opposed the general core of the Judaism, of the Jewish people. Since it was the source of all bad, Egypt, therefore that source of all bad, the general core of evil, opposed the core of all good, which is the essence of the good that exists within the souls of the people of Israel. The etzem is the essence, the essence of Hatov. Tov is the good. So the fact that Egypt was like the essential essence of bad, it opposed the essential essence of good that's in the souls of people of Israel. So that's because one is opposite of the other. And this is So now that's what happened when they were in the slavery of Egypt, meaning the atzem, the essential core of the good that existed within the souls of Yisrael was opposed by the general core of all bad, which was the idea of Egypt. But that was in the slavery, which meant not only physical slavery but mainly a spiritual slavery. But this is the idea of the redemption of Egypt, which is a spiritual redemption. Because the freedom of Egypt wasn't only the fact that they physically left the land, but it was mainly the spiritual redemption. Ruchnis, gula ruchnis. That the what does that mean? That the kudas, that the this is really one word, but it was on two separate lines. That the core of the good that exists in the souls of the people of Israel, in the kudas hatov, the core of the good, the essential good core that's in the souls of the people of Israel, was redeemed from its exile under the dominion of the bad of the Egypt. Meaning the fact that when they were in slavery, Egypt was the essential core of all bad, and that opposed the essential core of good in the people of Israel. But during the redemption from Egypt, which was a spiritual redemption, it says that the core of the good that existed within the souls of the people of Israel was redeemed from underneath the dominion of the bad of Egypt. So it's like the idea of the redemption of Egypt is the redemption of the core, of the essential core and source of goodness that existed within the souls of the people of Israel. So that was redeemed from its exile underneath the dominion of the bad of Egypt. Okay, so now let's see what it says based on that. So there is to say, this is like a novelty that wasn't said before, that this is the reason that the redemption of Egypt is an eternal redemption. Meaning, it's going to say, Egypt, the fact that we went out of Egypt is something that we remember every day. There's a commandment to remember the exodus of Egypt every day for all time, such that it's not only a one-time thing, it's going to say, until that each and every one of the people of Israel is obligated to see himself as if he left Egypt. There's a concept in the Talmud that says every generation and every day even someone should see himself as if he's literally going out of Egypt every day. So that's the idea of Egypt being an eternal redemption. So why is that? Why is Egypt an eternal redemption? Why is it relevant for all time? Because through the redemption of Egypt, it was redeemed the essence of goodness that existed in the souls of the people of Israel, like we said. And it went out from the impurities of Egypt in a way that it's not anymore possible. There's no more possibility that the people of Israel will be underneath the dominion of the bad of Egypt anymore. Meaning, through the spiritual redemption of Egypt, it was done in a way that it's not possible that the essential core of the goodness that existed within the souls of the people of Israel should anymore be under any dominion. Meaning, it's going to say, even though there's other exiles after Egypt, but Egypt is the source of all bad. But since we had the redemption from the source of all bad, which opposed the source of the good, which opposed the essential core of goodness, therefore, once the essential core of goodness was redeemed from Egypt, it can never be under any dominions anymore, ever, even though there's other exiles after Egypt. But since Egypt is the source of all bad, which opposed the source of all good, therefore, when we were redeemed from Egypt, we were redeemed from the source of all bad, meaning the essence of good, the essential goodness, was no longer under the dominion of the bad, such that anything that happened afterwards does not affect it. So that's what we're saying now, that the redemption of Egypt is an eternal redemption, because through being redeemed from Egypt, the essential core of goodness was redeemed from the essential source of bad, which will never be under the dominion again, such that the essential core of goodness will remain always free. So that's why every day we have to see ourselves as if we left Egypt, because every day it's affected that the essential core of goodness is redeemed. Anyway, so and automatically, in connection to the essential core that's in the souls of people of Israel, behold, from the time that they went out of Egypt, they were made free people. B'nai Chorin, like literally children of free. It means like free. They were made free people. When they went out of Egypt, they became free, such that they can never be not free, even in this later redemption, because the essential core of goodness was freed. To that this that is, so why is that? Because the dominion of the bad in the other exiles, because there was other exiles after Egypt, which other exiles also represent the idea of the bad overcoming the good, but still, it's not the same, because the dominion of the bad, in quotes, in the other exiles, since the bad, since the bad that are in these exiles, the later exiles after Egypt, is only who is only the the offshoot of bad. It's not, meaning in the other exiles besides for Egypt, it doesn't deal with the essential bad anymore. Only Egypt was the essential core of all bad, which was already we were already redeemed from. But all the other exiles are only the hispashtus, which means the offshoot, not the essence, like a just like a ray, like nothing, the offshoot of bad. So all the other exiles are the offshoot of bad, but not the essential bad. Therefore, even the dominion is only in the offshoots of the powers of the person. Meaning, the fact that we're still in exile after Egypt, that doesn't affect the essence of the soul at all. It only affects the offshoots of the powers of the soul. Meaning, just like it's the exile comes from the offshoot, meaning like the ray, the outer level of bad. Therefore, that outer level of bad only opposes the outer level of good, but not the essential good, which is um, the intellect and emotions, etc., which it might be possible that it could have such a slight sense of even though there's no real dominion at all over people in exile in the soul, but saying that the possibility of exile is only in the intellect and the emotions, even though that itself is not definite, but saying the entire possibility of dominion in the other exiles is only in the intellect and emotions, etc., which is not the essence of the soul. But the essence of the soul, behold, it is constantly in a connection with Hashem. So the essence of the soul is constantly connected with Hashem, which no exile after Egypt can ever affect, since we were already redeemed from Egypt. And there's to say that this is the main point of what it says in a commentary called the Maharal, that the redemption of Egypt, that in the redemption of Egypt, the people of Israel, the children of Israel, accepted upon themselves an essential level of free people, and the events of exile that happened after this does not nullify this at all. Meaning, when they became free people at the time of Egypt, they took on an essential status of freedom that will never be nullified through all the other exiles.